What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm super excited because I'm going to be showing you one of the newest libraries from organic samples and orchestral tools called Tableau Solo Strings. So again, Tableau Solo Strings is a solo strings library created by Maxime Luft. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Maxime, but this is a beautiful library. And it contains basically three types of solo strings. We have violin, viola, and cello. So before we go into the DAW and kind of look at the features and the articulations, let's just kind of go over a little bit on the homepage of what the product's all about. So at the time of this recording, there is an intro special going on, and it is 89 euros until June 30th. So if you're watching this after June 30th, it's 119 euros. But if you're watching before, just make sure to pick it up if you're interested at the intro price of 89 euros. And some of the highlights are 3 individual solo instruments. So that's like violin, viola, and cello. All legatos and glissandos are recorded with long transitions, okay? Legatos and glissandos are provided with or without vibrato, which is nice. So you can actually switch between vibrato and non-vibrato using a CC, MIDI CC parameter. There are unique ornaments and grace notes at note onset or note end. There is extended dynamic range from very quiet to very loud. So we'll take a look at the dynamic range in a second. And also 5 microphone positions, okay? So the microphone positions I personally like to download usually are the close and the decatry. And the reason is if I want a roomier sound, then I will download an extra, ambient mic position or something like that. But usually I prefer the detail and the richness in close mic'd samples. And the decatry is also very good because it has a very beautiful combination of both the close and the room sound as well. So the decatry is usually the mic you want to pull up first to kind of see, okay, this has a nice combination of detail, and it also has some response from the room as well. So a lot of mixers will pull up the room mics first and say, okay, once I have the room mics up, is the level of detail good? Do I want to bring in more close mics or spot mics, or do I want to bring in more ambient or surround mics just to balance it out, to my taste? So that's something you want to look out for. Anyway, let's get straight into the library. So when we're in the sign player, which is totally free, when you have it licensed, you can pull it up here. You can press browse, go into solo strings, and then here are the 3 microphones. So I have here spot and tree. If I open up this instrument, you can see the violin has all these different articulations. So all the basic sustains, you have short notes here, you have spiccato, pizzicato, and tremolo and trills as well. And then here you have some ornamentation. So this library is very interesting because it kind of is not the most traditional library with these ornamentation, things there. So same with the viola. See if I can scroll down a little bit. The cello also has the same ornaments. Okay, so if we just pull open all 3 here, we have a very consistent set of articulations. And so what I've done is I've actually pulled up everything here. And you can see here on the bottom, I've pulled up an extra violin instance just in case. So when I show you the demonstration, we also have another violin in there, just for like a string quartet type of purpose. Okay, so we have the library. If we look at the performance, you can set up your key switches so that whatever you press, it goes to that articulation, So this is just a regular key switching method. When you perform your lines in, you can manually put in key switches afterwards to trigger between different articulations. Very standard stuff. Taking a look at the mixer, we have the different positions. We have spot mic and tree mics, right? And if you download all the rest, then you have 3 other mic positions for each of these instruments. So at the moment, I have both the spot and the tree loaded in. So first of all, let's play the violin a little bit. See how that goes. So I'm going to make sure I have on violin my sustains attack CC1 plus legato. So I'm going to play some lines here, and you're going to hear the instrument start performing legato. So a very detailed sound there. Let me just play this with the mic mixer page. So let me address a couple of issues here. First of all, let's hear what the tree mic sounds like on its own. So unlike a lot of other tree mics, this tree mic actually has the violin a little further back in the room, actually. You really don't hear too much of that definition, unlike other libraries with their tree mics. In fact, most of the definition is going to come naturally from the spot microphone, which sounds like this. Okay, so definitely drier, definitely a slightly less stereo spread there, right? But one thing that's a really cool test for instruments is the spot microphone, because if they sound good in a spot microphone, then when the reverb comes in and the rest of the hall you can start to hear it, then it's more like it's hiding the detail a little bit, right? So the spot mic is the least forgiving. You can hear all the artifacts, you can hear all the programming, the tweaking in there. If the samples are programmed badly, then you're going to hear, those problems, right? So in this particular instrument, the legato is actually very good in my opinion. It's very, very smooth, and there really are no artifacts in the legato. Let me address a couple of questions here. So the first thing you might be asking is, I hear those rebowing notes. So is that something that can be controlled? Is there an option for infinite bow? And that's a great question. At the time of this recording, there actually is no infinite rebowing option. So that means when you play a note, you're going to hear the rebow, right? So the performer's going back and forth on their bow. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe you're playing a chorale passage and you need that string line to really go a little bit further. So what you would have to do at this moment is print that sample to audio, and then cut out the part where the rebowing happens. Just copy and paste the part where the sustain is happening without the rebow, and just paste it together that way. So I'll show you in a little bit what this sounds like in the context of a kind of a chorale passage, but just so you know, there is no infinite rebow at the time of this recording. Another thing is that you heard the portamento, or the glide between the slide between two notes. So if I play this, so that really emotional slide there. So that's activated by a very low velocity. So you would have to play the subsequent note very, very lightly to trigger that that emotional slide between those notes. Okay. Let me move on to a couple of these other articulations here. So we have the sustained attack, which means obviously the performer is attacking the note when they perform the note. So there is like a nice bold attack, right? Sustain's immediate means you immediately hear the sustain. Okay, versus the attack. Okay, and then the sustain's accented, you really hear the tug on the string. And then after the accent, it kind of fades away just a little bit. And then it continues to sustain. So, the without legato is basically just polyphonic, so you can play multiple lines there. Marcato short. Okay, lots of detail, lots of bite in those notes there. Spiccato. Okay, nice bite in those spiccato notes. Pizzicato. Nice sound of the Teldex Hall in there as well. Some tremolos. So a pretty standard pace tremolo, nothing too fast or nothing too slow. Now the trills are very interesting. Listen to this. So you hear how they start slowly, and then they go faster and faster, which is really cool. By the way, these are minor second trills. So E to F, for example, half step trills. Okay. So you don't have whole step trills in this case. And then we have ornaments. So now this is where it's interesting. So the attack of the note places an ornament into the sustain. So ornament major up, that just means major second. So a whole step, kind of a trill upwards, and then it goes back to the original note. Then you keep playing. Now, one cool thing is if I, like kind of like the other orchestral tools libraries, when you play a note, then you play another note, it triggers legato, but if you keep on holding the first note and release the second note again, it re-triggers the first note. So you can play your own custom trills. Right? You just have to keep the first note held down and then kind of release the second note. So that's pretty cool. But, you know, it's nice to have the option of the pre-recorded ornament as well. Then we have ornament major second down, so a whole step downwards. And if you really want it to seem like multiple players, then you can choose the sustain option. Okay. And then we have the minor versions as well. And I'm just rounding up the mod wheel there. Cool. All right. Now, in terms of all three instruments, again, we said how consistent they are. And I personally love the tone of the viola the most. And a lot of people are kind of caught by surprise. But yeah, I would say the viola really is like a secret weapon, as Maxime says himself. It's a very, very beautiful instrument. And it's very, very natural sounding. So have a listen to this. And then we'll kind of talk about the differences between the viola and the violin, and why I personally feel the viola is more playable than the violin. Cool. So just a quick note here, all the sustains, the regular sustains were recorded with one dynamic layer only. So that's mezzo forte. Kind of strikes a nice balance between, you know, quieter playing and loud playing, but the purpose of this is to perform really emotional lines where you don't really need the absolute loudest dynamics or the quietest dynamics as well. So the sustains and the legato have a really beautiful expressive quality, you know, so that, you know, if you had multiple dynamic layers, it would actually make transitioning between the different dynamic layers a little more tricky, because there's extra work required to make sure that when you transition from one dynamic layer to another, that there's no phasing or there's no audible transitions between those two layers, you know? So in this case, when you only record one dynamic layer, it prevents that issue, even though CC1, the mod wheel, still has a little bit of dynamic range. So just naturally they programmed a little bit of dynamic range into there. If I play a sustain, you can hear this. I'm going to start the mod wheel all the way at the bottom. And this is pulling it up. And then back down. Back up. Back down. So it's very, very slight. It's very subtle, but there is some dynamic control in case you want to shape your line the way you want it to. Okay, so that's beautiful. So hearing the viola playing legato and the violin playing legato, I personally like the viola performance a little bit more, and I think a lot of this really has to come down to the way the performer is performing the vibrato. You know, when they start playing, there's a little bit of a non-vibrato texture, and then as they play that note, the vibrato comes in a little bit later, which actually sounds very, very nice. If you compare it to the violin and we hear this line, you hear how each note that I'm playing on the violin, the vibrato comes in right away. So there really is no, there's no like back and forth versus non-vibrato and vibrato. There's a consistent level of vibrato happening for each note. So that's maybe not the most expressive way to play, whereas in the solo viola's context, if you play a note and progressively add a bit of vibrato into each note, then it sounds a little bit more emotional, because it's like you have that maybe less emotional quality of the regular sustain without the vibrato, but then when the vibrato comes in, it just increases the amount of emotion in there. So right? So a lot more rich and a lot more beautiful that way when you have that non-vibrato, and then the performer adds in the vibrato a little bit afterwards. So if we just take a look here at the vibrato options, we have vibrato and non-vibrato. Very, very simple. And by default, it's controlled by CC4. So if you want to assign it to any other parameter, you certainly can. So you would just use these arrows to decide which CC value you want to. And you know, if you don't have a fader on your keyboard to control this, what you can actually do is go into the track itself. So if we just double click this, you can pull up the MIDI data, piano roll, and in Logic, if you just go here to the bottom, you can choose which channel you want to control. So here, if I choose the number 4, which is what it is over here in sine, then it's naturally going to control the vibrato. So then if I choose number 4, then let's say I do a line here. If I bring it down, you can see it's selected on vibrato, but if I bring it up past a certain value, it's going to go to non-vibrato, you know? So that's just a nice feature to have, right? So I'm gonna read or undo this because I don't need that value there. Okay, cool. So that's how that works with the vibrato and non-vibrato. So you can really automate it to bring in vibrato when you want it to, in the case of the violin. But for the viola, I think it just has a much more natural performance because of that. In addition to that, Orchestral Tools and Maxime really captured the lush and full quality of the viola because it has a more woody sound. It's a little more expressive in that case. The violin is naturally a little more thin. But I think for the viola, they captured a little more of the resonance in general, so it fills in the hull just a little bit more. The violin sounds a little bit closer in comparison. Finally, we have the cello. So here's what this sounds like. So yeah, having the infinite bow option would really be useful in this library. Cool. So yeah, the cello also sounds very beautiful as well. Okay, and again, all the articulations are very consistent among all the instruments. So let's just play through a couple of these here. Let's start with Mercato long. So for the cello and the viola, the marcatos are actually looped, so you could play them as regular sustains. But what's really cool is they have this nice long, or nice emphasis and accent on the attack of the note, which is cool. Spiccato, some short notes. It's a lot of bite in there, especially with the spot microphone pulled up. Pizzicato. So what's really cool, because the higher velocity I play, the harder I press those notes, the more pluck you can hear from the string, right? Like, you know, very, very emphatic on those pizzicatos. A little bit of tremolo here. Okay, awesome. Trills. Okay, and some of the ornaments. Going down. And minor second, so half step. And finally going down. Okay, there we go. So you can see that there actually aren't too many articulations. It's not one of those libraries that's like going to be a workhorse library for every single application. So this library, personally, to me, has a very kind of focused application. So for more expressive lines, or for a little more outside the box playing that's not necessarily symphonic Western music, you might find this library very, very useful because of the extended articulations here with those ornaments. And then these standard articulations are also, you know, quite good and very solid. There's nothing that they're really, really missing there. So you could always want some more articulations like Holeño or Bartok Pitts or, you know, things like that. But I think it really covers the essential bases really well. Most importantly to me, I always consider the sound and the playability. For me, it's very, very playable. Especially, again, the viola and the cello, they sound great because of that swell into the vibrato. And the legato sounds beautiful. There's really no artifacts that I can hear. And the fact that they have one dynamic layer for the mezzo forte sustains is very, very beneficial in that case, because there's no need to crossfade between different dynamic layers, which can usually cause a lot of problems for libraries. So before we close off here, let me just play you a little bit of a string quartet type of thing. So I've pulled up, you know, two instances of the solo violin, then we have the solo viola, and then the solo cello. And in the second half of the piece, you'll hear the Cinematic Studio Strings ensemble come in as well. And just a little side note here, a question I get a lot is it better to perform string lines one by one like we did here, or is it better to play them as chords? So the general answer is, if you're sketching out ideas and if you're just trying to get a basic thing down without too much detail, then playing chord-wise is perfectly fine. But if you're trying to go a little more intimate and go with the have as much flexibility as possible, then playing line by line is the best option, because you can actually take a look at everything that's happening and you can take into consideration all the voice leading and counterpoint that's going on. When you only have these chords, then you're thinking more like a pianist instead. So sometimes that can cause problems if you're not voicing properly. But in any case, let's get into this track really quickly. Here we go. So two things jump out to me in this case. Number one, for a traditional type of chorale thing where it's quite expressive and quite dynamic, the lack of additional dynamic layers can make it seem a little bit static in terms of the expression and dynamics. So there's always a bit of a compromise when you decide to sample less dynamic layers, because you don't have as much expressive capability. However, you do get increased quality in the legato and the dynamics, just because there's no crossfading happening there. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, but in general, I think it works. And then second of all, the infinite rebowing option would have been really useful here, and I definitely would have used it in this case, because sometimes when the next note starts, you get this instant like rebowing sound, so it kind of detracts from the piece. But in general, I think the most important parts like the legato and the playability and the way it responds is very, very natural, and to me there really are no technical aspects I can really pick on for this library. So Maxime did a wonderful job. The OT team in general does a great job. And yeah, I personally find it very playable. So I would definitely recommend this library to you if you're looking for some solo strings that can really hold a expressive melodic line very well. Again, just keep in mind that it will naturally rebow, so you might have to time that with your chord changes if that's what you're looking for. The short notes are beautiful, the pizzicato, the spiccato, the marcato shorts, these are all very biting articulations, and they have a lot of strength and grit in them. So if you're looking for something to do kind of a more virtuosic performance with a lot of agility in the short notes, then this library will also do that very, very well. So for me, I really enjoy this library due to its nature of having those bare bones articulations like the sustains and the marcatos, so the longer sustains, and then also the short articulations like the staccato, spiccato, pizzicato, and then you have the tremolo and trills, which is very nice. I would have loved it if they sampled some larger intervals for those trills as well, but what can you do? And then and of course their ornaments, so the major second and minor second ornaments going up and going down adds a little flair to your lines in case you want to have that flavor in there. So very, very cool. More of a niche library, but again, if you like the sound and you like the playability, then definitely one to consider. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you're an orchestral composer looking to improve your orchestral mockups and trying to get a really full and rich sound, I want to point to you to my 10 steps to a clear orchestral sound. So it's a totally free guide for you in the description box below. Just pull it up. It's some of my best tips for getting a really clear and detailed and rich orchestral sound in your mockups when you're producing your orchestral music. It's very, very helpful, I think. So it's like, 10 of my best tips on arranging. There's orchestration tips in there. There's some mixing things. So, the next time you're working on a project, definitely just pull it up and you can follow along. So it's very helpful, I think, if you're just starting out and you're trying to, polish up your mockups. There you go. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.